charge in this next 10 minutes is to review with you the most exciting new programs that is out there, some with approval, some not. So the bad news is that I have 10 programs to share with you in 10 minutes. But the good news is that I'm not going to show a single number, no data, only pictures. So fasten your seatbelts. So I do have conflict of interest regarding this presentation. I work as a proctor for Boston Scientific in Latin America, and very soon in the US. So this is the landscape. We all know that we started with first generation core valve and SAPIEN, but now we are moving very fast with several options that can be customized for different situations in your cath lab. So my charge again is to briefly describe this actually 9 programs. There are a couple more that for the sake of time and perhaps they are not very ready yet for prime time, so I selected those. SAPIEN 3 Ultra, which is the next generation of SAPIEN family. Centira, that Antonio already briefly mentioned. Evolute R with Medtronic, Portico, Abbott, Lotus with BSC, as well as the most recent acquisition from BSC with the Accurate valve. Gina Valve, Allegra, which is a company based in Germany, new valve therapy. And finally, My Valve with Mary Life Science, which Dr. Sharma has been very, very instrumental and active to enroll patients in his hospital in India and had a recent approval from the India FDA. So briefly, SAPIEN 3 Ultra will be a very interesting next generation valve on balloon delivery system as the SAPIEN 3 originally is. However, it's going to be pre-crimped, so you don't have to do that alignment that you do before you implant the valve. So it is one step less. So essentially, this is a valve that you're going to take from your shelf and be able to implant immediately. They also developed a new sheath, which is very interesting as well. It's a true 14 sheath, but it has a polymer that has memory, and it reshapes back to the original size. So this is, again, a 14 French that can be used for multiple sizes. So the combination of this next generation valve with this sheet will make our life much easier in the cath lab when the option is to use an Edwards device. Also by Edwards is the Centira device Antonio mentioned already. It's a motorized system, self-expandable. The height is not as tall as you're used to with core valve. User-friendly, so I tested that preclinically. We are waiting for more clinical data, but this is also going to be an interesting alternative in our cath lab, the combination of balloon expandable and self-expandable valve. This is the Edwards portfolio. This is a close-up look of this valve. Again, open cells at the proximal portion that helps, and also short, we have no problem with coronary access, and very interesting and retrievable device. Again, it's going to be pre-crimped, and this is how we're going to receive in our lab. Again, this is a valve that can be in our shelves, no need for crimping, so that makes our life much, much easier. Evolute R, I think we have enough data, and it's approved here in the US, so only a single slide. And this is, again, the difference between the first generation core valve with core valve Evolute. The height, also good access, supraannular design, which is really impact on the whole profile of the device and the hemodynamics. Because then you're going to see less gradient, you're going to see a better valve area when you have supraannular solutions. And this is partially retrievable up to almost 80%. When you deploy it, you can retrieve and reposition, so which is also a very attractive feature. The Portico device by Abbott just finished a large study, and very soon I hope it's going to be approved here. Again, very similar. The design is similar to core valve. However, you see more open cells at the proximal portion of this valve. And again, since you have less metal with this device, it can conform a little bit better with different anatomies, particularly the ones that are not so circular. Boston Scientific developed and acquired the Lotus valve quite some time. They went through a 1-year recall just to fix some of the problems that they saw with the first generation, but conceptually this is an interesting valve as well with a self-expandable nitrile, but with a very high radial force. So this valve is fantastic for bicuspid valve, for supercalcified annulus, and it's also partially retrievable. You only deploy, you only release the valve when you are 100% sure that you don't have paravalvular leak, that you are in the right position, and then finally you can release and leave it with the perfect position. Most recently, I'm going to spend a few more seconds to describe the ACURATE because it's coming soon to the United States. We're going to start the study here in 1 or 2 months. So this is what Antonio already mentioned, self-expandable, has these arches that stabilizes the whole system, centralizes the system, very easy and intuitive to deploy. It's based on 2 sheets. You see, this is the alignment. First, you pull back the proximal sheet, you release the upper crown, and subsequently, you release the arches. So then, without rapid pacing, without that emotion when the patient is experience low blood pressure, you take your time, and then you do the last step, which is to release the lower crown. So very easy, intuitive, and predictable deployment. So this is a quick video so you can appreciate. That's why I'm spending a little bit more time, because you're going to start enrolling patients here in the US very soon. Again, alignment, and then the first step is really, and then you rotate the knob clockwise, you release the upper crown. At this point, you can move the valve forwards and backwards for better positioning. The second step is to release the arches. So you still can go forward to adjust for the perfect deployment. You do your test, and when you are 100% sure, you rotate the knob clockwise, number 2, as you see, after releasing the safety bottom. And then the distal sheet is going to go forward a little bit, and we'll deploy the lower crown. So this is, again, predictable, easy to use. Some limitations, as Antonio said, perhaps a little bit less radial force. So for very calcified vessels, very calcified annulus can be a limitation. This is an actual case that we did in São Paulo. Proximal crown being released, and then immediately after that, you see the release of the arches. So the whole system is centralized, coaxial, and then finally, you do the final deployment, which is to release the lower crown, as you can appreciate that. Again, this is also a single operator device. So this is the final result, in this case with no paravalvular leak. Going forward, a GINA valve, to me, there is a special feature of this valve, also self-expandable, but the beauty about this valve is that can be potentially used for aorta insufficiency. So Dr. Sharma already mentioned that with less calcified valve, with regurgitation, we don't have optimal solutions yet. So besides for aortic stenosis application, I think this could be a great device for aortic insufficiency. It really grabs the leaflet, and as you can see in this step-by-step diagram. So the first alignment, it grabs the leaflet and then you deploy. So despite the fact that the patient will not have a lot of calcium in the annulus, this could be a fantastic solution for aortic insufficiency. Allegra, we tested also in São Paulo. It's another self-expandable valve. This is a spin-out from Jomed from Germany, new valve technology. Interesting, self-expandable nitinol as well, supraannular solution. It first releases the middle of the valve, as you can see, so it kind of touches the annulus, and then you have a 2-step release, proximal and distal, and again, being a little bit more predictable for self-expandable, so since you don't have full control when you have a nitinol being released that can be sucked into the ventricle, or if you pull back too much, can be embolized into the aorta. So interesting solution. We'll see more data coming from Europe very soon. So finally, in this last 30 seconds, I think I was precise with time, is my valve that was last month approved by the Indian authorities. This is a valve developed in India and tested and first in man in that particular country. So it will remind you the most features of SAPIEN 3, but has some uniqueness. As you can see here, very close. They were able to, instead of PTFE, change the tissue to avoid paravalvular leak. Again, open cells more up to the proximal side, good access to the coronary, good radial force. And these are some of the features for this valve. And again, the European study is about to be started. And they also developed their own sheet, which is called Python, which is an expandable sheet that can accommodate up to 29 valves. So this is going to be also an alternative, and we have to be very conscious about cost. So having alternative for developing countries, this will be fantastic to be able to treat patients with this disease that is essentially limited to the most developed and rich countries. So it's good news to have alternatives to be able to achieve a more poor population. So thank you so much for your attention.